On the vast Eastern Front, in the winter of 1941, two massive armies clashed. But for the average soldier, the deadliest enemy wasn't the opposing force. It was the cold. The relentless biting cold seeped into every trench and uniform, showing no mercy to either side. Temperatures plunged to -40 degrees Celsius, turning metal brittle, freezing weapons, and making each breath feel like inhaling glass. Ill-equipped and exposed, soldiers faced a constant battle just to stay alive. The wind cut through greatcoats, and shelter was little more than a hole in the frozen ground. The human body was pushed to its limits, with survival becoming a minute-by-minute struggle. For every combat wound, many more soldiers were lost to frostbite, hypothermia, and trench foot. The cold didn't just kill, it broke morale and ground down entire divisions. Nature itself became the most formidable weapon, indifferent to flags or causes. The statistics from that winter are chilling. Cold-related injuries outnumbered battle wounds. In the face of such raw fury, survival depended on respecting the oldest enemy of all. On the steppe, the cold was the true silent killer. Of all the winter's dangers, frostbite was the most feared. It crept in quietly, first as numbness, then as a devastating freeze that destroyed tissue from within. Soldiers would remove their boots to find pale, lifeless feet. In the worst cases, blackened flesh meant amputation. Hospitals filled with men who'd lost fingers and toes, not to bullets, but to the cold. Frostbite didn't just maim, it crippled entire units, rendering them combat ineffective without a shot fired. The logistical strain was immense, with thousands evacuated for cold injuries. The cold dictated the pace of war, halting advances and sapping strength. Soldiers lived in constant fear, obsessively checking their extremities for signs of damage. The sight of a comrade's ruined feet was a grim warning. The psychological toll was severe, eroding morale and fostering helplessness. The cold was everywhere, inescapable and far more personal than distant artillery. Frostbite was the invisible crippler, an enemy that struck without warning. The standard-issue leather boot, meant to protect, became a hidden danger. The problem wasn't what got in, but what couldn't get out: sweat. As soldiers marched and worked, their feet sweated. In the sealed boot, moisture had nowhere to go. Damp socks wicked heat away, chilling feet rapidly and setting the stage for frostbite. The cycle was relentless. Exertion led to sweat, then inactivity turned that sweat into a freezing compress. Soldiers often found their socks frozen to their skin, risking injury just by removing their boots. The armies focused on keeping water out, not realizing the real threat was trapped inside. A dry foot, even in a thinner boot, was safer than a wet one in the thickest leather. This painful lesson in thermal dynamics forced soldiers to rethink survival. The simple act of managing sweat became a matter of life and death. The boot, designed for protection, had become a silent accomplice to the cold. Soldiers needed a solution, fast. And so, necessity sparked innovation. Desperate for relief, soldiers improvised. They began lining their boots with whatever absorbent material they could find: newspaper, straw, scraps of cloth. Newspaper acted as a sponge, drawing sweat away from socks and keeping feet drier. Straw, abundant in rural areas, added both insulation and absorption. This wasn't an official solution, but a grassroots trick shared across armies and foxholes. At day's end, the soggy liner was discarded and replaced, breaking the cycle of moisture. The boot liner trick was simple, effective, and spread quickly among the ranks. It was a daily ritual of survival, passed from veteran to recruit. This small act of ingenuity saved countless feet from frostbite and amputation. Sometimes the simplest ideas make the biggest difference. The genius of the boot liner trick was its understanding of layers. The sock provided warmth. The liner absorbed sweat before it could soak the sock. A dry sock trapped air, preserving insulation. Wet socks lost all warmth. The liner created a barrier, keeping feet away from the cold, damp boot. Its disposable nature allowed for a daily reset, something standard boots couldn't offer. Soldiers could start each day with dry feet, dramatically improving their odds. This proactive approach managed moisture before it became deadly. The layering principle, skin, sock, liner, boot, became a survival standard. It wasn't about piling on thickness, but about managing how layers interacted. Through necessity, soldiers became pioneers in thermal regulation. Their improvised solution was a masterclass in practical engineering. The lessons of the Eastern Front shaped modern cold-weather gear. The boot liner trick inspired today's three-layer system: wicking base, insulating mid-layer, and protective shell. Modern materials like merino wool and Gore-Tex do what newspaper and straw once did: manage moisture and retain warmth. The principle remains: keep sweat away from the skin, trap heat, and block external moisture. This evolution, from straw to synthetics, was driven by the memory of immense suffering. What began as a desperate trick is now standard for soldiers, mountaineers, and anyone braving the cold. The knowledge once whispered in frozen trenches is now a billion-pound industry. The boot liner trick's legacy is everywhere cold-weather gear is worn. It's proof that the simplest innovations can change the world. And it all started with a scrap of newspaper in a frozen boot. Warm, dry feet meant more than comfort. They meant hope. The boot liner trick gave soldiers a sense of control in a world ruled by chaos. It boosted morale, allowing men to stand guard longer and fight harder. Relieving the misery of cold feet freed up energy for survival and combat. Sharing the trick built camaraderie and trust within units. Veterans taught newcomers, turning survival into a shared ritual. Looking out for each other's feet became an act of solidarity. A unit that cared for its feet cared for its people. In a war of attrition, small victories mattered. The humble boot liner was one such victory, proof that adaptation could beat despair. The boot liner trick is more than a historical footnote. It's a lesson in resilience. The best equipment is useless without the knowledge to use it well. Soldiers survived not because of their boots, but because they understood how to manage moisture and cold. Today we rely on high-tech gear, but the real survival tool is the human mind. Ingenuity and adaptation matter more than any issued kit. The story of the boot liner is a call to value knowledge over gadgets. It honors those who endured by thinking, learning, and sharing. Our greatest strength lies not in what we carry, but in what we know. The boot liner trick is a timeless parable of human adaptation in the face of nature's might. As we close the chapter on this ingenious tale, remember, knowledge is your best defense, whatever challenge you face. If you enjoyed uncovering this slice of history, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories of survival and innovation. Join our community of curious minds. Hit the bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay curious, stay prepared.